You know, I'm sick and tired of talking about Mike Tomlin, man. I really am. But you know, I owe it to not only this channel, but to myself as well for putting out another recap and for putting out kind of like a part two to it because StreamYard's glitchy sometimes. And I forgot, and my microphone wasn't in. But you know what? The Steelers are glitchy. And the Steelers are glitchy because Mike Tomlin is glitchy. And I always say this. I say this every time. A team in any sport always takes on the character and the personality of their head coach or their manager. And it seems like I make this video at least twice a year with the Steelers when it comes to Mike Tomlin, when they lose a close game, when they get blown out of the water, when we, I guess you can say, lose a game that we, quote, should have won. As a matter of fact, stop saying that, this is a team that the Steelers should beat. Stop saying stuff like that. You know why? Because you, if you take a look at how the opponent plays and compare that to their scheme with ours, is it really a team that we should beat? Because it seems like we outslop them more than they outslop themselves. That's just how it's been. And it's been covered up for years. For years. Literally, Mike Tomlin's entire stint as head coach since 2007 because we haven't had a losing season in 21 years. That's the only reason that people give Tomlin any leeway. You guys ever notice that when the Steelers are being talked about on Football Night in America or Fox's pregame shows or postgame shows or CBS's pregame shows or whatever it is, whatever you want to plug in, notice how every single time the Steelers are brought up in any kind of media outlet and they talk about Mike Tomlin, notice how every single time the first thing they talk about with the Steelers is they have the standard and they haven't had a losing season in 21 years. That is not the standard. Okay? This fan base, you can call us spoiled all you want. You know what? I don't deny it. Because I'll tell you, we are spoiled. When your team is as successful and your franchise is as successful as the Steelers are, and you have seen more than enough you've seen more than enough success than what most fan bases can say that they've seen, you set the bar high. Okay? Finishing over 500, that's the bare minimum here. And that's not the fan base's standard, okay? That may be Tomlin's standard, that may be Art's standard, but it's not the fan base's standard. They don't fly with us. Finishing above 500, winning 9 games, winning 10 games, barely making it to the wild card round, needing other teams to help you out to get into the playoffs. That's their standard. That's Tomlin's standard. That's the Rooney standard. That ain't the fan base's standard. That is what the Pittsburgh Steelers have become. And it's disgraceful. I mean, I'm not going to sit down here and say that I've had it terrible in my 22 years of being a Steelers fan because, quite frankly, I haven't had it terrible. But that doesn't mean I have to take just the complacency and the pig-headedness and the stubbornness that this franchise has. It doesn't mean I have to take it. I'm going to sit down here and voice my frustration. And when they have a bad game, when they crap the bed, when they have no effort, I'm going to say it every time. And I don't care if you don't like it. And after Sunday night's game, I don't want anybody to ever question my fandom again. Never. You want to know why? Because the game was delayed for 85 minutes with thunderstorms and a torrential downpour. It was basically a monsoon over there in Pittsburgh before the game started. It was originally supposed to start at around 8:20, and it got pushed back to about 9:45. So you're looking at an 85-minute delay pretty much, a 90-minute delay, give or take. Okay? And I stayed up the entire night. I sat down in front of that TV for 4.5 hours, put my first post game out at around 2:30 in the morning on Monday, and I only got like 4 hours of sleep. And I'm still tired. The only difference is I have more energy. The only thing that separates me from the fans that went to the game is that I was not at the game. And I feel for those fans that had to drive in that crappy weather, spent their hard-earned money and their paychecks on those tickets to watch that atrocity Sunday night. The overall lazy game plan again, and being stuck in traffic driving home from the game. I feel bad for those fans. I feel sorry for them. They deserve better. They really do. The MVP of Sunday night's game was Steeler Nation. That is the MVP of Sunday night's game. The Steelers fan base. So don't you ever question my fandom again. Because literally, if this was a matchup between two teams that I could give a crap less about, I probably would have turned off the game at halftime and went to bed. All right? But getting on to this. Like I said, it just seems like I make this video about twice a year, every year with Tomlin. And the number one game that did it for me, that broke me with Tomlin, that made me lose any kind of faith that I had with him, was the wild card game in 2020. Getting outcoached by a team who is much less your division rival, much less a team that you've dominated for the last 50 years, in your stadium on national TV, and you completely just get outplayed. That is, yes, I know the bad snap by Marquise Pouncey at the very start of the game. I know Big Ben threw 4 picks in that game. But being outcoached by a team who didn't even have their head coach, that's the epitome of being outcoached. And that just leads into what I'm saying in this video. How many more excuses and how much more passes is Tomlin going to get from this fan base? And I'm just going to say it, and I know a lot of you aren't going to like hearing it, but it's the truth. You know deep down inside that this is the 100% gospel truth about Mike Tomlin. I retain my stance on this, that if Mike Tomlin was both white and had a generic name like Jeff Smith or Bob Young, he'd have been fired years ago, and this fan base, everyone in this fan base would want him fired right now. I stand by that statement 100%. Okay? Because it happened again Sunday night. Where was the aggression? Where was the urgency? Where was the preparedness? And I understand you can't blame Tomlin for when players make mistakes. But like I said, where's the urgency? Where's the assertiveness? Because you look at it like this. Sure, the defense came away with 2 strips. The defense came away with 3 turnovers. A strip sack that the Steelers recovered and 2 interceptions. One in the end zone by Dante Jackson that killed a great drive for Dallas. And then JPJ, a great interception in stride. And you know how many points the Steelers came away with total on those 3 turnovers? 7 points. Like literally, if the Steelers got a touchdown on just another one of those turnovers. Sorry about that. The grounds crews outside, they're pretty loud sometimes. But as I was saying, If the Steelers got a touchdown on just another one of those turnovers, we win the game. But that's exactly what I'm talking about. There was no aggression off of those turnovers outside of the late touchdown that the Steelers had off of JPJ's pick on Dak. And then another time it's like, oh, well, we got a turnover, Instead of being aggressive like most normal offenses would, and passing the ball and mixing up the play and getting up tempo, no, we'll just run it 6 straight times, and then on third down, we'll throw it. We'll have Justin Fields force a pass. It'll be incomplete, and then we'll punt. No aggression. None. And, it's not like, and, I'm not saying that the Cowboys are a bad team, okay? They're a very good team. I wouldn't call them a Super Bowl contender. I wouldn't call them an elite team, but they're good, okay? They're good enough to go to the playoffs. I just don't trust them when it comes to making a Super Bowl run, all right? But that's exactly what I'm talking about. How many times at every press game conference is Tomlin going to sit down there and talk to the media and go like, well, we lost to a good team. We need to do better. We need to take advantage of opportunities. Well, stop talking about it, Mike, and actually do it for a change. Because this Dallas team was missing the following. They were missing Micah Parsons. They were missing DeMarcus Lawrence, a.k.a. their 2 best run stoppers and possibly their 2 best players on defense right there. They had no Deron Bland in the secondary. They had no Carson in the secondary, and they were playing a practice squad corner for as far as I'm concerned. And you mean to tell me that on 27 total carries of offense collectively, 27 carries on the ground against a rush defense that was bottom tier going into this matchup, a rush defense that on average allowed 145 yards a game. You mean to tell me that this offense can only manage 92 yards on the ground total? Najee Harris, 42 yards on 14 carries. 3 yards a carry. And how much longer are we going to use the offensive line excuse? I know Isaac Seumalo got pancaked all night long, but that doesn't excuse Najee Harris. Najee's dancing around. He's not finding the times when the run blocking is giving him holes and gaps to run through. Same thing. And I said this back in week 2. It doesn't matter who's the offensive coordinator. It don't matter if it's Arthur Smith, who called a terrible game, by the way. I mean, look, I'm not ready to give up on Arthur Smith just yet, okay? I would say this is his first real bad game that he's had as the OC. But still, I'm not ready to give up on him just yet, because I still have this little bit of glimmer of hope that he can turn it around and that we can have some kind of burst on offense. But I'm not giving him a pass for this game. Arthur Smith had a very bland offensive game plan and very bland offensive play calls for this game. He did like nothing to help to make it better. Nothing. But it doesn't matter who we have at OC. Don't matter if it's Arthur Smith. Don't matter if it's Randy Fichtner. It don't matter if it's Todd Haley. It don't matter if it's Bruce Arians. It don't matter if it's Ken Wisenhunt from back in the day. Hell, it doesn't matter if it's Matt Canada. It don't matter who we have at defensive coordinator. It don't matter who the quarterback is. It don't matter who's on the O-line for us. It don't matter who's in the backfield. It don't matter who our receivers are. It doesn't matter. This franchise changed not only the entire quarterback room in the offseason, but they changed a lot on the offensive line. They brought in veterans as well. And it's the same game plan every time. Play like absolute crap in the first half. Wait till the second half. to have your quote-unquote best brand of football, or as Mike Tomlin said in the game at halftime, well, they put a boot to our butt, and we need to focus on putting ours to theirs in the second half. Mike, stop with the proverbs and actually do it. What's the one common denominator with all that I mentioned? It's the head coach. You guys know it as well as I do. It's the head coach. Okay? Does Justin Fields deserve some blame for Sunday? Yes, he does, but it's to an extent, all right? I would say this is his first bad game that he's had with us right there with Arthur Smith, because there were times where Fields was missing targets. I mean, he missed George Pickens, threw behind him, and if he was like maybe a second earlier with that throw, Pickens takes it to the house. And I'll get to Pickens in a little bit in this video, but it doesn't excuse Justin Fields for this game. He did okay, but not terrible. He had a couple of touchdowns, but just the overall conservativeness, the laziness, the lack of execution, the whole country saw it. The whole country saw it, and Tomlin once again and his coaching scheme gets exposed in front of a national audience once again. The Dallas Cowboys had a red zone efficiency of 25% in this game, and this was supposedly a defense that does really well in the red zone. And you can't stop them at the goal line right there. Oh, except for Landon Roberts making that great play at the goal line that caused a fumble, and no one was quick enough to react to recover the fumble. And then instead of saving your final timeout, because Dallas had just used their final timeout, so instead of saving your final timeout and potentially having another chance to, at the very least, tie the game with a kicker who can hit it from 50 plus, and if he misses it, he misses it, but hey, at least you used your timeout for something meaningful. No, he wastes his last timeout, Dallas scores, and now we can't stop the clock with 20 seconds left to try and win the game. 9 times out of 10, you lose. And they lost. The terrible clock management once again. And it's not like Tomlin even had a good scheme on defense as well, because Dallas had, wait till you get a load of this. The Cowboys had 445 total yards of offense. That's a season high for them. They had 4 receivers that had 50 yards receiving or more. Rico Dowdle, who I didn't even know existed until this game, had a career high in rushing yards. All the soft zone defense that took place the entire game, the lack of pressure, the very few times that they pressured Dak Prescott, the players not being able to cover, Minka missing assignments, stupid crap like Deshaun Elliott tripping on his own 2 feet to try and stop a touchdown. That's all execution. That's all scheming, and that's on Tomlin. You see it on offense when stuff like Van Jefferson and CA3 were out snapping George Pickens the entire game. And speaking of Pickens, Mike Tomlin's excuse for why Pickens wasn't being targeted like at all in the game. Oh, wait till you hear this. His excuse was because of the snap management and because he was rotating like they do on defense. So, if that's the case, Tomlin, let me ask a perfectly legit question. Why in the living fuck do you need to rotate your only impact wide receiver? Why? That has to be the dumbest excuse I have ever heard in my life. I thought him not having a game plan for Joe Flacco against Indy was the dumbest. But you know what? At least you don't need really much of a game plan for a backup quarterback all that much. But there's no excuse to not have Pickens out there. And the times that Pickens was out there, he looked lazy. He looked careless. He threw a little bitch fit at the end of the game. Okay? No one's denying that. But there's no excuse. Yeah, because Van Jefferson sure is a world beater. CA3 sure has been lighting up the world outside of that one touchdown he had against the Chargers a couple weeks ago. And you're telling me that you can't even give Pickens a good amount of targets and plays in the game? Are you serious? But then again, I'm not totally shocked about something like this because let me tell you, Mike Tomlin, this guy would make an excellent politician. He really would because he just says he just says things that the media wants to hear and then he never delivers. He'd make an amazing politician. He really would. Wow, man. You really think that you really feel the need to rotate George Pickens? I mean, I don't know. I don't even know how to respond to that. I don't know how to respond to that, man. So we're 3-2 now. And guess what, guys? If you think the schedule gets easier, oh, you're wrong. Vegas may not look like a formidable opponent, but that game screams trap game for us for two reasons. Number one, the Raiders got blown out by the Broncos. And number two, guess what? The Steelers are notorious for playing awful wherever the Raiders are, whether they're in Oakland, LA, Vegas, even China. We always do bad against the Raiders in their stadium. And I understand that we beat them last year in Vegas for our first road win against them since 1995. But going by how the Steelers played tonight, do you really think that you can be any kind of confident in that game? Do you really think Davante Adams looks at this offense and goes like, yeah, this is the offense that I want to play for. This is the guy that I want to have be my head coach? I sure as hell wouldn't. So Steeler fans, you can forget about Davante Adams coming over here. There's no way he's going to want to come over here. So just forget about that. I'm not even going to make a video about that. Okay? So we got Vegas next week. After that, we got to play the Jets again on Sunday Night Football. Jets have a tough defense, and they got one of the best quarterbacks to ever play in Aaron Rodgers, who's 40 years old. But then again, we got sliced and diced by a 40-year-old Joe Flacco last week. Got the Giants on Monday Night Football. Do you really think the Giants are a cakewalk? They went to Seattle and beat the Seahawks. Then we have our bye week. Then we got to play Washington. Jaden Daniels is just lighting up the scoreboard and the stat sheet. He is making a strong case for being Rookie of the Year. And Washington looks like a very competitive team right now. I don't know if we can beat them. And then I believe after that, we have four straight divisional games against Baltimore, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Cleveland again. May not be in that order, but you get the point. We got 4 straight divisional games, followed by a stretch where we play 3 games in 10 days because we play the Chiefs on Christmas Day. Well, before the Chiefs, we play the Eagles in Philly, so we get to lose in Philly for the millionth time in a row. The Chiefs on Christmas Day, and then about 10 days later, we got to play the Ravens again, and then we close the year off playing the Bengals. Yeah, this schedule is brutal. And we're sitting at 3-2 on a 2-game losing streak. Look, I'm not ready to throw in the towel for the season just yet because I know it's still early in the season, but seriously, man, 5 games. 5 games in the season, that's all I need to say about this team just having a repeat season. It's going to be the same thing. We may not be absolutely terrible. We may not be a bottom feeder. But you know what? I would honestly rather be a bottom feeder than having just being complacent. Because at least when you're a bottom feeder, you know your team just stinks. Being complacent, you don't change a damn thing. At least you see teams like Carolina making changes. At least you see teams like Jacksonville making changes. What do? We just do the same crap year in and year out, expecting expecting a different result. It's insanity. We keep plugging the square hole, the square peg in the round hole. That's what the Pittsburgh Steelers do. And we're stuck with this guy Tomlin until 2028. We're stuck with him. So that's all I got to say for this video. And if you made it this far, hey, you're a trooper, man. I mean, 26 and a half minutes in about me just saying what I've said about Tomlin for the 1,000th time on this channel. Hey, you're a trooper. Just like you were for wasting your Sunday night and parts of your early Monday morning watching that just pathetic showing by the Steelers against the Cowboys. You're a trooper for that. Anyway, I'm going to end it here. I'm Mac, checking on out for the day. Have a good one, everybody.